So what we see is we see the evolution of television, and this is about television and what comes next and how we tell stories in this new environment, how we tell and measure stories in this new environment. So when we launched Blockboard, it was with the idea of making the automated buying process, the programmatic process around CTV, much more transparent, reduce the opacity in it, reduce the fraud in it, make it easier to use, and drive results from it. Right? There's a lot of positives from the legacy of TV, but one of the negatives of the legacy of TV is the tyranny of media metrics and measuring things, these proxy metrics that we use, right? And we do that in digital today. The ultimate currency, the ultimate measurement is going to be how effective was that ad? Did something happen, right? Were you able to get a consumer, a potential customer, to take an action for an outcome? And those outcomes vary by the customer and what their KPIs are. But that's now possible. And the only way you're going to do that is if you have transparency, if you have good data. And so we came into this with what we say is a plexiglass box. We based everything that we do is based on Web3 principles. We harness the blockchain so that that all of our reporting is in one spot. It's immutable. No one can change it. It's one source of truth. We pre-verify every single ad call that comes through, just to make sure that it's a real human. We only deal in premium inventory. We don't deal on long tail. We're different than most other programmatic players. It's not about just pure volume, but it's about effective volume. It's about what works. It's about learning how to move from a mass reach into a personalized reach environment on that big screen. How do you tell stories? How do you tell narratives over time? You mentioned frequency earlier in this conversation. Frequency is a nightmare, right? And it's a nightmare to the point to where we have to manage it. But frequency has always been the ugly stepsister of reach. And frequency is really, really important. What we aim to do is to harness the power of frequency, right? An ad is like a salesperson. And Mike, if you're a client and you give me a frequency of 5 to talk to you, I am going to learn from each of my interactions with you to tailor my message to you so that I can help you, so I can give you something of value at the end of it. If I came in and just gave you the same pitch 5 times in a row, you're going to throw me out halfway through the second one. Right. And that's the state of advertising today. We're bombarded with the same ad over and over and over again. And so it's really about how do you harness the power of frequency? And that starts with really good data. That's where the decentralization of blockchain comes in. It's not our data and our reporting is not set in one company's servers somewhere. It's distributed thousands and thousands of computers, and it's available. Everything that we do is available to the client to see. And we think that it's this approach that is absolutely necessary for more dollars to come in, but then for them to be confident that they got something out of it. And that's where performance comes in. One of the things that we saw, the big aha moment for us, was traditionally, and we've been in traditional TV, and now we've been in ad tech for quite a while. And the performance KPIs on brand advertisers were always the secondary KPI. It's always the one it's like nice to have. If it lifts the needle, great, right? But otherwise, it's media metrics that we're doing. When we realized that our processes, powered by blockchain, that our processes were winnowing out all of the fraud, winnowing out the algorithmically driven traffic, and it was real humans. Where you saw the real value of that is at the end of the transaction, at the end, where people actually picked up a phone, clicked on something, they bought something. Our clients started saying that they were seeing sales results from after they had worked with us. And so something just switched in us, and it was like, we think that we can really now bring the power of performance out of the world of DR, which is really dependent on desperate sales managers and cheap inventory, cheap reach, into performance we think performance is the ultimate KPI, and that's what we start seeing when you run super clean, when you run with the advertiser's priorities in mind first. Really good things can happen, and that's why we formed Blockboard, and that's what we've been seeing over the last 3.5 years.
Matt, your company's been very vocal about the fraud issue. This industry spent billions to combat it, seemingly to get a handle on it. What are you seeing that everyone else isn't seeing out there?
We see the fraud problem as a problem of incentives. The incentives for the bad guys is in the billions with a B, right? The incentives for the good guys is I get my commission, I get to be on the buy, I get to keep a customer. So those incentives are not going to be solved by tech alone. They're going to be solved by a platform that allows people that is very picky about the impressions that it takes. It's not about volume, and it's not about lining VC's pockets. It's about doing what's best for that client. So the approach that the market has taken to fraud is seemingly reasonable. There's companies that have risen to solve it. They kind of play both sides of stuff. But again, they're trying to have a technical solve for something where the incentives are so misaligned that it's going to be very, very difficult to do. So it's going to take a certain type of filter, a certain approach that we've employed here at Blockboard that allows us it gives us a 5-9 degree level of confidence that when we accept an ad call, that is a real human from a legitimate site, and that confidence has paid off for our advertisers in the results that they see. So I think fraud is with us for a while. I also think that there's a lot of money being made in the complexity of the current system. And there's a fraud preventer is now one of 6 companies that you need in order to execute a digital deal. We think all of this needs to be collapsed. It needs to be simpler. The more decentralized it is the better. That's why we think that things like blockchain and the principles of Web3 are absolutely inevitable in the future of advertising. And we feel like we've got a good early start on it. And based on our experience and based on what we've seen so far in the last 3.5 years, advertisers are starting to pick up on that.